Hello, I will be discussing sexual positions with a MLM and MSM focus. So that just means I won't be going too in depth into like sapphic women or anything. Um, all the information's from the internet or from my own experience, and with that, let's begin. Sexual positions are a set of labels and identities that aim to define and express sexual preferences easily and effectively. Um, They're not indicative of personality, so you can be any type of person and any one of these or any one of not these. They're also not static, so some people can remain the same sexual position their entire lives, but a lot of the time, people actually do change or discover new sides of themselves. Also, they're not always related to power. They can be, but they're often not. Power is a different topic entirely. And they're also not universal, so this changes country to country, culture to culture, and city to city even. Um, it's also not necessary for everyone. Some people don't want them, some people don't like them, some people don't even need them, and that's fine. So they're not just for men, like Pillow Princess, Top Bottom, Stone Top, etc. These labels are used and often created by sapphic women and queer women, and they just run themselves into like men's vocab, I guess. Um, they also have intersectional use, so as a part of queer culture, the notion of sexual positions, or lack thereof, interacts with people who have diverse sexual preferences, to say the least. In some cases, even being adopted by heterosexual individuals, for example, pegging. Um, Also, stereotypes and archetypes. These labels and identities often come with certain stereotypes. These range from ongoing jokes and assumptions, for example, she's a bottom if she has long nails, to disrespectful interpretations. Queer people themselves often perpetrate certain stereotypes or embody certain archetypes, which can be harmful. Um, Also, the four most common sexual positions for MSM slash MLM are top, bottom, versatile, often shortened to verse, and side. These are what most hookup apps and dating apps and media address, side having the least media coverage as a relatively recent rise to common use. Um, and while these labels and more could be explored through sapphic women and gender non-conforming individuals and even straight people to an extent, this presentation will be focusing solely on men who have sex with men and men who love men, both exclusively and not exclusively, so bi and gay. Um, so with that, let's begin. Okay, tops derive pleasure from penetrating their partner anally, and whether that be with a penis, a toy, fingers, or other objects and body parts. Traditionally, tops have been primarily depicted as masculine presenting. However, plenty of femme tops, cross dressers, and trans women embrace the role. Um, I believe heterosexism is a large factor as to why tops are seen as more manly. Other reasons range from older ideas around gay and bi plus men to ideas around submissive and dominant roles. While tops do and often assume a dominant role, submissive, passive, and soft tops exist in pretty drastic numbers. Um, Next is bottom. Bottoms are those that gain sexual satisfaction from being penetrated anally. Um, Many queer men mistakenly believe that certain power dynamics, such as age, height, size, or how they present, makes them relegated to take on a certain role, or the role of the bottom, and vice versa for top. Some bottoms complain about the disparity in preparation distribution and how they are seen as air quotes the woman. And while the differences in preparation is mostly avoidable, though not all the time, and as anal sex is onerous on the receiver most of the time, the notion that bottoms are somehow more feminine solely due to their sexual preference should be challenged. Verse or versatile people are those that are versatile in some capacity and like to both receive and give anally um, to some extent. Um, Verse isn't always a solitary position and is often used in conjunction with other positions, for example, verse top, verse bottom, verse sides, um, indicating a preference to one form of sex but an openness to switch it up or make exceptions. Next is side. Side is a term invented by Dr. Joe Court, and it is broadly used to describe those who don't, prefer not to, or cannot perform anal sex. Despite being talked about since the late 2010s, it's only really gained traction in the last 3 years and mainstream use in the last 2 years. Um, its popularity has been greatly increased with the addition of the label on Grindr. Historically, many gay men have practiced exclusively side sex, from Insecure in Greece to people adapting to the AIDS crisis. Though the label is increasing in popularity, it sometimes invokes negative and hostile reactions from other MSM and MLM people, um, but not always. Some people identify it as third sides, and some people have trouble reconciling this. But in reality, there's plenty of reason why someone might prefer non-penetrative sex, but might be versed in some capacity. So preference and compatibility. This is the short end section. Um, so preference versus compatibility. Sexual positions are sexual preferences, and while some people refuse to date those that don't align with their position, it is not an indicator of overall compatibility. But how? I like to call this COC. Compromise, openness, and communication. Compromise is basically just give and take. Maybe put in place timeframes or find alternative methods that are pleasing to both parties. There's plenty. Also, openness. By being open with desires and issues, it's easier to communicate them. And finally, communicate. Convey in detail how you want something or why you don't want something, and then plan accordingly. Yeah, and I find that usually works to some extent. And finally, degree of strictness. Some people won't ever or can't fit into a certain role slash hole, and that's okay. Also, for many people, love and more importantly, time, boredom, and experience often change or impact how they view sex or label their position, but not always. And that's all okay. And with that, I thank you for listening, and goodbye.